French society during the late 18th century. In this part, we are going to study what was the background for the French Revolution, how the society was divided, what things were risen there which made the people to revolt, make riot against of the monarch. That things we are going to see in this part. The first of all, we will understand the political part. Political part means changes in the rule. The ruler changed in a 1774. Louis XVI of the Bourbon family of kings ascended the throne of France. In the year of 1774, Louis XVI of the Bourbon family became king of the France. When he became the king, he was just 20 years old and got married to the Austrian Princess Marie Antoinette. Austrian princess. Listen my term, listen my pronunciation properly. This is the Austrian. Student always make mistake here to understand Austrian. They makes mistake here. They thinks believes Australia. It is not Australia. It is Austria. Austria in the Europe. In the Europe, the Austrian named one country is there, which is neighboring of the France. So I think you may get clearance about the Austria and Australia. King Louis XVI got married with the Austrian Princess Marie Antoinette. After getting accession, the king found the treasury is completely empty. There is nothing in the treasury. The treasury is completely empty. Why the treasury became empty? The reasons are given. The long years of war had drained the financial resources of France. France was busy for long years in the war. That is why the financial resources became less or weak. Again, added this thing, what things are added here? The cost of maintaining an extravagant court at the immense place of the Versailles. The Versailles court is a lavish court, and to maintain this court's cost was extravagant, lavish, more. That is why the expenses increased. Under Louis XVI, France helped the 13 American colonies to gain their independence. This is the third reason. First reason, long years of the war. Second, the maintaining of the extravagant court. The third, France helped to the 13 American colonies to get independence from the Britain. The Britain is the old ancient enemy of the France, and the 13 colonies which were belonging to the Britain, but they were having in the America. These American colonies were not ready to follow control of the Britain. So the war took place in between these 13 colonies and the Britain, and in this fight, in this war, France helped to the 13 colonies. This is again became burden to the France treasury. Independence from the common enemy Britain. The Britain was the common enemy of the France and the 13 colonies. So this war added more than a billion livres. Livres is the currency of the France. Than a billion livres to the debt that had already risen to more than 2 billion livres. The burden increased on the France treasury. Lenders who gave the state credit, the people who gave state credit now began to charge 10% interest on loan. Earlier, the money was provided as the state credit, but now these lenders charged 10% interest on the loan. So it was the needing for the French government to spend increasing percentage from the budget. The budget on interest payment alone. Most of the budget spent on the paying interest to the lenders to meet its regular expenses. On the other hand, the regular expenses were also there. What were the regular expenses? Cost of maintaining army. It is needing to maintain the army, the court, running government offices or universities. The state was forced to increase taxes. To complete these expenses, it was needing to increase the taxes. The state forced to increase the taxes. The increasing taxes is also not enough here. Yet even these measures would not have sufficed. It were not enough. The French society in the 18th century was divided into three estates and only members of the third estate paid taxes. The society was divided in a three divisions, three estate, and among these three divisions, three estate, only the third estate was paying the taxes. First, clergy, and second, nobility, third estate, big businessmen, merchant, court officials, lawyers, etc., peasants and artisans, small peasant, landless labor, and servants. So taxes were paid by only these three groups. These three groups only paying the taxes. The clergy, the clergy and nobility were not paying the taxes. They were having exemption from paying the taxes. The taxes were paid by only the third estate. It was the system in the France. The figure 2 is showing the figure 2 shows how much system of the estate in a French society was organized, how the system was there, how the society was divided there. With the figure second, we can understand. The first estate, clergy, second estate, nobility, and this third estate. Large population, the 90% population was having from the third estate, and only 10% population was from the clergy and nobility. But the estate was enjoyed more by the first and the second estate. They were enjoying 60% land, 60% estate, 60% property by the 10% people, and remaining 40% by the 90%. And from that also, big businessmen, merchant, court officials were having dominating. So most of people were landless, small peasant, those who were bonded with the first and second estate. The society of estate was part of the feudal system. The feudal system, it was the system in the medieval Europe, followed in the Europe. The nobility was dominating in this system. The nobility was providing protection to the people, and whenever war situation was there, in that war situation, these people were providing army to the king. That is why the nobility was dominating, and this system was called feudal system. The feudal system that dated back to the Middle Ages. The term old regime, the old regime whenever is used here to describe the society and institutions of France before 1789. Whenever the old regime is used, it means it is describing the society and institutions of France before 1789. Figure 2 shows how the system of estate in a France society was organized. Peasants made up about 90% of the population. However, only a small number of them owned a land they cultivated. It means many were landless. About 60% of land was owned by nobles, the church, and other richer members of the third estate. Many people, most of the population was landless or small land owning people. The members of the the first were the clergy and seconds were the nobility. The clergy and the nobility enjoyed certain privileges. These people were enjoying certain privileges. What is privileges? Privileges means special political rights. These people were enjoying special political rights which were not getting to all. Very few people were enjoying these privileges. The privileges by birth. These privileges were getting they by birth because they are taking birth in the first or the second estate. That is why they were getting these privileges. There was no any merit for it. The most important of these was exemption. What is exemption? Exemption means relaxation. These people were getting relaxation, no compulsion for them. What relaxation they were getting? From paying taxes. They were getting the exemption from paying taxes to the state. The taxes were just paid by the third estate. From all taxes, the clergy and the nobility were getting exemption. The nobles further enjoyed feudal privileges. The nobles were having the feudal privileges. What feudal privileges were there? This includes feudal dues. The people had to pay feudal dues to the nobles, which they extracted from the peasant. Peasants were obliged to render services to the lord. Not only the taxes were paid by the people, these people were rendering services to the lord. Services, they were in the form of work in the house and fields, to serve in the army, or to participate in the building roads. These were the works done by the third estate or the landless people for the nobility. It was not again enough. The again situation was worse. We will see here. The church to extracted its share of taxes called tithes. For church, the tithes were paid by the third estate from the peasant, and finally all members of the third estate had to pay taxes to the state. This includes the direct tax, tallies, tally, which is the tax paid to the state, and a number of indirect taxes which were tithes, tallies, along with the other taxes that the number of taxes which were levied on the articles of everyday consumption like salt or tobacco. The burden of financing activities of the state through taxes was borne by the third estate alone. The all taxes were paid only by the third estate. The third estate was only bore the all taxes. Look this figure. This figure is showing how the nobility is crushing to the third estate people. The activity is given here. Read this picture and explain why the artist has portrayed the nobleman as the spider and the peasant as the fly. The nobleman is shown as the spider and the peasant as a fly. How the spider is catching the fly in its net that is shown through it. So read the activity, read the picture and complete the activity. We'll move further. The struggle to survive. What happened there? Why people got struggle to the survive? We are going to see in this part. The population of France increased during 1715 to the 1789. A large population increased in this period. It was 23 million in the earlier period now, but it became 28 million. So the population increased. Increasing population means the demand for food also increased. If the demand is increasing, the land producing, which land is producing the food, that is not producing more. So the production remain same. The pace of production not increased in the way the population is increased. So the scarcity of food is occurred in the France. Not only the population increased there, along with that, bad harvest was also reason for the low production in the France. If the low production is there, production of grains could not keep pace with the demand. So the price of bread, which was the staple diet of the majority, rose rapidly. The price of food increased. Price of bread is increased because the production not remain in the same way in which way the population increased. Most of workers employed as a laborers in the workshop. Many people were working as a worker in the workshop. Their wages were fixed, which wages were fixed in the earlier time. Its were not increased with the changing in the time or with the changing of the prices. The prices increased, but the wages remain same. So people were unable to complete their needs. But the wages did not keep pace with the rise in prices. So the gap between the poor and the rich widened. That is why the rich become rich and poor become poor. The gap in between rich and poor widened, increased again and again. So all these situations where people were unable to buy the food that was frequently occur in the old regime of the France, and this is called the struggle to the survive or the subsistence crisis. The subsistence crisis term is also explained here. Subsistence crisis, an extreme situation where the basic means of livelihood are endangered. The people were unable to buy the basic needs, basic things for the life. This situation is called subsistence crisis, and kind of this situation was always occurring in the France, in the old regime of the France. The course of subsistence crisis, what things were happen there in this table you have to fill, and how the subsistence crisis to occur in the old regime of the France, that with this flow chart we will complete. The next point we will see here, a growing middle class envisage and end up to the privileges. The new middle class, which was showing the opportunities, possibilities of the new world, new era. It was cause of the which the middle class grew here. The middle class, what is the middle class? We will see in this part. And with the rise of this middle class, they were thinking to make the end of the privileges. These people started to speak about why the privileges were given to these people, why the privileges are provided by birth. It should be on the merit. This was the argument by the growing middle class. The growing middle class was from the third estate because in the third estate many businessmen were there, many educated people also there. These educated people started to raise the question about the earlier way of the society. In the past, peasants and workers had participated in revolts against increasing taxes and food scarcity. In the earlier period, the peasants were made many revolts movements against of the increasing taxes and increasing prices or the food scarcity. But these people don't know, were unaware to express their views in a formal way. But they lacked the means and programs to carry out full scale measures. Their measures were not enough, they were very short. That is why they did not get success in the earlier period. Full scale measures that would bring about a change in the social and economic order. This was left to those groups within the third estate who had become prosperous and had access to education and ideas. The full scale measures were left on the shoulder of the middle class people, those who were businessmen or the educated people. They become prosperous through their businesses. They made business with the other countries. Overseas businesses were made, trade were made. That is why these middle class became prosperous and many people got the education. So they brought new ideas in the society in the France. They want they make the changes in the French society. The 18th century witnessed the emergence of social groups termed the middle class, just I explained, who earned their wealth through an expanding overseas trade and from the manufacture of goods such as woolen and silk textile that were either exported or brought by the richer members of the society. Through the trade, this middle class emerged. Through the trade which they made with the foreign countries, they earned more money, and with getting this money, they became prosperous. When they went for the trade to the other countries, they just not exchanged the commodities, they exchanged ideas also. They understand the liberty. In addition to merchants and manufacturers, the third estate includes professions such as lawyers or administrative officials. Along with the businessmen, the educated class was also part of the middle class. All of these were educated and believed that no group of society should be privileged by birth. So these people were believing no group should get privilege by birth. Rather, a person's social position must depend on his merit. They want, they think they started to spread the message the position should get depend on the merit. These ideas envisaging a society based on the freedom and equality, equal laws and opportunities to all. These people asking the ideas were spread here, the freedom, liberty. These people want freedom, equal laws. The laws should be same to all, whether he belongs from the first estate, second estate, or the third estate. To all, the laws should be same. No should get a special privileges. These ideas were spread by the middle class philosophers, middle class people. These ideas envisaging a society based on a freedom and equal laws and opportunities to all. Everyone should get opportunity were put forward by philosophers such as the philosophers were worked here. Many philosophers worked in the France, make change in the France. John Locke and Jean-Jacques Rousseau in the two treatises of government Locke sought. He wrote the book, the Locke written this book. In that book, he is given the idea. Locke sought to refute the doctrine of the divine and absolute right. He was shown his opposition to that doctrine which was getting by birth. These people should not get privileges by birth. He was trying to show. Rousseau, the another philosopher who worked here, Rousseau carried the idea proposing a form of government based on the social contract. Rousseau was saying the government is the social contract in between people and the representatives of the people. The spirit of the laws. Montesquieu, the another philosopher, which is given his idea the spirit through the spirit of laws. What he proposed here, the division of power within the government. The power should be not concentrated in one hand, it should be divided in the different organs. That organs are already we have seen in the class 8, legislative, the executive, and the judiciary. This idea is given by the Montesquieu through the spirit of the laws. This model of the government already was followed in the USA. The USA is formed with the freedom of 13 colonies. The 13 colonies which fought with the Britain, who taken help of the France, later on became the USA. After the 13 colonies declared the independence from Britain, the American Constitution and its guarantees of individual rights was an important example for the political thinkers in the France. These ideas were discussed throughout the France. This not remain in a book. The idea of the philosophers were discussed intensively in saloons and coffee houses and spread among people through books and newspapers. Different mediums were used to spread the ideas. The formal, informal, all kind of discussions were taken place, and the ideas of these philosophers were spread of the equality, of the fraternity, of the democracy, and end of the privileges. These were frequently read aloud in a groups. Those who were unable to read, for them frequently read aloud in the groups for the benefit to those who could not read and write. The news that Louis XVI planned to impose further taxes to be able to meet the expenses to the state generated anger when people listened the view of the Louis XVI to increase the taxes. Now people got angry. They generated anger and protested against the system of the privileges. This was the situation in the France in the late half of the 18th century. We have studied in this part the background for the French Revolution in the 18th century.